I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. They'll banish us, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a frog, to tell your name. The livelong June to an admiring bog. Welcome to Poetics, where poetry meets real conversation. I'm Tamara Rockwood. I'm coming at you from Bainbridge Island. Today, we're just going to get straight to it. I have a ton of things that I want to talk about. So before we do that, grab your favorite drink, get some coffee, get some tea. Let's dive in. We're about to explore this beautiful, ancient form of gatekeeping. I mean poetry. This is Poetics Podcast. So today I have a whole bunch of rambly notes, and I'm going to try and make this as linear as humanly possible, but honestly, I don't know where this is going to go. And I think that that's okay. So what I want to talk about today is who gets to be a poet. There's questions of what is a poem. There's questions of what is poetry. But who gets to be a poet? There is something that I nip in the bud every time I see it and hear it, because I've done it. A lot of us have done it. And I'm telling you authoritatively, on record, don't do it. I am an amateur poet. Oh, that's such... Oh, don't. There's no such thing as an amateur poet. I was just ranting about this the other day. I'll rant about this until my dying breath, I'm sure, because there is always this imposter syndrome of poetry. Who gets to be a poet? I am only an amateur poet. Oh, it's such bullshit. Oh, it just makes me so mad. Because if you wrote a poem, you're a poet. There you go. That is it. You are allowed to say you're a poet. You don't even have to say, I only write poetry on the side. I only write poetry for myself. All of these ways that we diminish our work is absurd. It's absurd, and you don't have to do it. And I encourage all of us that if you have a friend, or if you're listening to someone and they say, I write poetry, that's all they have. That's it. Encourage them. Encourage yourself. I could probably rant about this for the next 30 minutes, but I have so much stuff to cover. So that's all I have to say. Just, if you've written a poem, you're a poet. And we're moving on. So the question is, who gets to be a poet? And that is this gatekeeping that has been going on for, centuries. And I don't think that that's going to end. And I don't think that I'm going to be the one to finish it. But I would like to at least participate in the conversation. So where does this question originate? And besides the imposter syndrome, besides anything, is a lot of times when we read poetry, there's a few things going on. First of all, a lot of the poems that we read are from like 200 years ago, at the least, at least 100 years ago. We have a poet laureate right now. We've had a poet laureate in the United States for a long time. Britain has had a poet laureate for longer than us. But when we read poetry in high school as kids, it is usually a romantic poem during the early 1800s. It's usually Wordsworth or Tennyson If it's something more recent, it's probably Frost. It's something recognizable. And those are poems that feel like poems to us. And those are poems that we are told, when you look at a poem, this is what it should look like. This is what it should sound like. These are the elements that should be in there. And I mean, on one hand, that's great because you're able to look at something and you're able to say, that is definitely a poem. Or conversely, you could say, that is definitely not a poem. And that at least gives you a baseline. So I don't have a problem with that. That's great. But it also feels, and this is a bold statement, I'm going to make some bold statements, and I'm trying not to have too many disclaimers for myself. Every generation thinks that it's the first to discover that poetry belongs to everyone. And as soon as they do that, they start building new walls to keep people out. And that is part of the human experience, I'm afraid. I can't find a way to change it other than what I'm doing. I'm trying to bring people in, but I also send rejection letters in Bainbridge Island Press. I send the nicest rejection letters, but some of them are just, I'm going to get to that in a second. But as I said, this is kind of rambly, but we're going to get through this together, at least in 30 minutes. So the irony of all of this is that poetry is the most democratic art form that we have. And it's constantly policed by gatekeepers on a macro scale and on a micro scale. There are gatekeepers in our own workshops. There are gatekeepers in our own community. There's gatekeepers on a global scale. Like, have I been published by the Paris Review? No, absolutely not. Is my work good enough for the Paris Review? Probably not right now. But, there has to be gatekeepers to keep the Paris Review, to be the elite Paris Review. You have to take that with a grain of salt. So today I want to talk about a few original gatekeepers. Because why not? I think that, we can talk about people who have gatekept in the past. All right, let's talk about the 18th and 19th century. This was a period, especially in Britain, because Britain was, I think that it's safe to say that they were definitely spearheading the poetry movement in Western cultures during the Napoleonic Wars, at least. But they were elite, educated, mostly male. There were some women writing, but I think that overall it was mostly a male domain. So what I want to do is I want to talk about Lord Byron versus John Keats. We're going to start there because they had different upbringings and they had different poetry, and it was a definite class divide. So the setup is Lord Byron. Let me get up. Hold on. I'm going to make sure that I get this right. Okay. I don't want to mess up on Byron because I think that he would actually rise from his grave to punch me in the face. That seems like something Byron would do. All right. So his name is George Gordon Byron. He is the 6th Baron Byron. He was an English poet. He is a poet during the Romantic movement, early 1800s. He wrote many poems that a lot of us are familiar with. He wrote Don Juan, which I realized was pronounced that way after watching Les Mis. And there was a scene with the men and they were singing the Red and Black song. And it's like, look, he's singing like Don Juan. And I'm like, oh, I lived in California too long. I thought it was Don Juan. It's not. It's 2 syllables. Okay, now you know. He was educated at Trinity College. He was educated in Cambridge. And he had a ton of money. And he traveled extensively throughout his life. He was... I don't know. He was a complicated man, but he was a very bold man. He was good friends with Percy Blythe Shelley. He apparently joined the Greek War of Independence to fight the Ottoman Empire. He was, I don't know, he was a character from Charactersville. So the reason why we want to study him is because he wrote very great poetry. So I'm going to read one. It's not too long. It's not Don Juan. But it is such a lovely poem. And it is She Walks in Beauty. She walks in beauty like the night of cloudless climes and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright meet in her aspect and her eyes, thus mellowed to that tender light which heaven to gaudy day denies. One shade the more, one ray the less, had half impaired the nameless grace which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens o'er her face, where thoughts serenely sweet express how pure, how dear their dwelling place, and on that cheek and o'er that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent, the smiles that win, the tints that glow, but tell, O days, in goodness spent, a mind at peace, with all below, a heart whose love is innocent. That's a beautiful poem. Lord Byron was a great poet, and that is undeniable. Now, when Keats was writing, he had a slightly different upbringing. He was the oldest of 4 kids. He unfortunately died at 25, which is a tragedy, but he published many poems. He had a few volumes, and he was not accepted at all. I can't even emphasize this enough. What did Keats say? Okay, what Byron said about Keats is just so mean. Here are Johnny Keats' piss-a-bed poetry and 3 novels by God knows whom. Oh, Byron. He also said, such writing is a sort of mental masturbation. He is always freaking his imagination. Also sounds like Byron. I don't mean he is indecent, but viciously soliciting his own ideas into a state which is neither poetry nor anything else, but a bedlam vision produced by raw pork and opium. Those are Byron's assessments of Keats' poetry. A little bit more on Keats's biography, which you can read for yourself. But he grew up with his family. His father owned stables. He was a very bookish child. He studied poetry, and he did very well in school. But it was not Oxford. It was not. It just was a very, very solid, loving middle class home. And so there was a lot of gatekeeping from Byron's perspective. Now, for the record, Byron was notoriously critical of many other literary contemporaries. I just wanted to touch on these, just to give you the full, experience of being a poet during Byron's time. Robert Southey. So Byron called him a political turncoat and a ballad monger. He said, Southey, you're a poet laureate, and representative of all the race. I don't know. It was about conservative politics. Wordsworth. I'm sure that there's many of us that know the back and forth between Wordsworth and Byron. Byron found Wordsworth's subject matter and plain style beneath serious poetry. He said that Wordsworth had both grown old in person and in mind, which, just the worst. He hated Coleridge. He said that Coleridge's poetry was mystical nonsense. He criticized his philosophical pretensions. He hated the Lake poets generally. So the Lake School he thought was too emotional, too democratic, too interested in common people and nature rather than heroic themes. And he extensively was arguing with publications and like the Edinburgh Review and other critics, and he would just respond back because he was Byron. Byron's gatekeeping was driven by his background, his classical education, his belief that poetry should deal with grand heroic themes rather than the everyday subjects that was favored by romantics. He did not have a problem making enemies, and unfortunately Keats was a very sensitive, very nice person. And so, that being said, this is Ode to a Nightingale by John Keats. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's actually rather long, but I'll read one stanza. My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some I'm sorry. I'm going to start again. My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains 1 minute past, and leathwards had sunk. 'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beseeching green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. How is that not absolutely beautiful? That is just, it's just a lovely long poem that you can completely lose yourself in. That's Ode to a Nightingale by John Keats. And Byron was just like, he's so emotional. He's just over him. Okay. So there has been gatekeeping forever. We will find it anywhere. But something else I wanted to touch on, besides that, I don't want to beat that horse too much, but also there are times when we gatekeep ourselves, isn't there? Isn't there times when we write something and when we're editing, we're like, this doesn't sound intellectual enough. This doesn't sound like it is enough. It doesn't sound like the people that are being published. And maybe I'm the only person this happens to, but I really doubt it. And the reason why I say I doubt it is because Emily Dickinson sanitized herself in her drafts. And this is something that can happen. And that is gatekeeping ourselves, isn't it? So the problem was, I'm sure you know about Emily Dickinson, but if you're new to poetry, then let me tell you, I've been in her house, I've been in her room. Tragically, I saw her grave, but I mean, she's not immortal. So there's that. So Emily Dickinson lived in Amherst, New York. She lived in a very lovely yellow house, and it had very lovely gardens, and she really stayed to herself. She had some friends. She had correspondence with friends. She had a supportive family. I really don't know if she ever had any enemies. I would like to think that she didn't. And if she did, you can just not tell me. I just need to believe that she just lived her life. She loved baking. She also died of hypertension. Those two might be related. But what she wrote was so lovely. So the poem that I started out with, I'm Nobody, Who Are You? That was a poem that Emily Dickinson wrote. And it's so optimistic and inviting. It is completely devoid of gatekeeping. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. They'll banish us, you know. All right, so how do we gatekeep ourselves? When we write, actually, this is a great time for me to be completely vulnerable on a podcast. You cannot avoid yourself. You cannot escape yourself when you're writing. And there are bad habits that we all have. And sometimes when we write, we avoid those because we remember the lessons that we have had, or, you know, where it's like we've moved on. We're not doing this anymore. But sometimes they sneak in, and it's so frustrating. Something that I will hear until my dying breath, or until my dying stroke of the pen. There are times when I am too complicated and I'm being too obscure on the page, and the reader's like, I have no idea what's going on. And in my head, it is clear as day. I'm like, clearly, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, nope, that's not what it looks like. And it is devastating to me because I would like to think that I've moved on and that I've grown in my writing and that I will never do this again. But I'm going to do it again. And you cannot escape yourself. And neither could Emily Dickinson. So one of her good friends, when he was editing, he said that he wrote to her that her poems were crude in form, and the public would not accept even fine ideas in such rough and mystical dress, so hard to elucidate. Oh, my heart. Oh, my nerves. Oh, that's just such devastating feedback, because I imagine that she's been trying to be clear forever. And so when you're faced with yourself, it's rough. It's just rough. And so what she did was she actually changed some of her wording, because she had to make this decision of between publishing and what the publisher thought people wanted to read, or staying with her own words. And so the damage is that the poems were extensively edited to match punctuation and capitalization to the late 19th century standards with publishing. In the I'm Nobody, Who Are You? I'm the one that I'm looking at. I can't really say that it's the most grammatically correct thing that I've ever seen, but also it's not incorrect. I'm nobody, exclamation mark. Who are you, question mark. Are you, M dash, nobody, M dash, two, question mark. There's so much punctuation in this. And punctuation was very sparsely used in her time. I would say that it's sparsely used now. And so when the editors removed that, punctuation changes a voice, and it changes the audience's relationship with the poem. So the edits led to a mostly dashless experience that actually took the soul out of the poet's original work. And that was the first time that the public read Dickinson, was no dashes, light punctuation, and that changes how it is. So, punctuation gatekeeping. It's so interesting how these conventions can change us. So, let me see. So, in conclusion, this sanitization process of poetry, do we celebrate these outsiders now? I mean, besides Byron and Keats, I mean, that was a long time ago. And my family wasn't even in North America at that time. When we're looking at gatekeeping, we forget that we're processing through conventional filters, or we are being processed through conventional filters. Emily placed a great deal of responsibility on her editors by leaving them to make the choice of a keyword or for punctuation. And she authorized them to color her thought with their taste. And the irony is that what made these poets revolutionary, through Keats' sensuous language, through Dickinson's radical punctuation and syntax, was actually exactly what the critics and editors tried to eliminate or normalize. And we celebrate their rebellion now, but well after it was made safe for public consumption. So let's think about the public consumption of poetry. There's most of the poetry that I've written is, I mean, it's not even that it's not publishable. It's like there's no context. It is for me, and it is my writing, and I have no intention of publishing most of it. I could, but you guys would be like, I have no idea what she's talking about, and it's obscure, and she's rambling, and I don't know and that's for me. And there are some that we release into the world, but they're with this conventional normality, this filter, because not all are going to be accepted. Now, that being said, there are poems that I have read that I'm like, that is not done. It's not done yet. I can tell that this was a first draft or a second draft, but there are things missing. And that is important for editors to be able to say, because that's why we're here, is to help you to be the best poet that you can. So there is a difference between helping and constructive feedback and gatekeeping. So the gatekeeping is a different, gatekeeping is Byron. Gatekeeping is, our self-sanitizing our words. A good example is, so it's like, I'm a pretty good person. This is my pitch to myself. I don't do crimes. I don't steal. I pay my taxes. I love the people around me. But the last poem that I had published, I dropped an F-bomb because it was appropriate for the poem at the time. And that was in New Verse Review, and the poem was Calypso praying in the produce section. And the line could not stand without the F word. It needed to be there. But I thought about it. I thought about taking it out. because does it degrade my poetry? Is it a vulgar word? Am I less of a poet because I used the F word in, you see, I'm not even saying it here. I used the word, the line was beautiful. It was, screw the dawn and fuck the sin. Let me keep him, keep him, keep him, keep him, keep him. And that is a great line. And without that line, the poem would be less. It would not be as solid. So let's not sanitize ourselves. Let's not gatekeep ourselves. Let's allow ourselves to say, I have written a poem, I am a poet. Let's not be amateur poets. Let's be poets. Let's identify. Who is a poet? We are poets. I think that's enough. I think that's all we need. Congratulations. Whew. Well, I think that's it. I think that's it for today, party people. So if you've enjoyed diving into the world of gatekeeping and poetry with us, please join us next time, where we've got more authentic poets to meet, more beautiful poems to explore, and more literary adventures to share. So until then, keep reading, keep writing, and keep poetry close to your heart. Thank you for joining POETICS Podcast, where we bring poetry to life, one verse at a time.